Hi and welcome to another episode of Top Volts, and today we're going to touch on a subject that happens to a lot of vintage cars. It's commonly known as white mould, and white mould is an occurrence on a lot of cars throughout the years, you know, through 60s, 70s, 80s, even into some of the early 90s. And what it is, I don't know if you can see there, you've got this white substance which appears all over the car. Like, for example, on this, you can see here, all of this area there. This is all what you would call white mould. All on the bonnet here, you can see it's all on there. It's all inside on here. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how to rectify this and to clean it off and hopefully prevent it from coming back. So first things first, this Audi Quattro is suffering with this condition, you could say. But we're going to have a look inside, see what we've got, see how bad it is in there. And run through the steps on how to solve this issue. So let's get into this and open the car up. So these Audis are held together with one screw at the back, and then it sits into a slot at the front. This is the four-wheel drive Audi. As you can see, if I move the back wheels, the front move, and this is run via a belt just on the side here. You can run two belts if you need, but it runs perfectly fine with one. These do tend to snap, but you can buy these online. So let's just remove the rear screw here. And we'll have a little look inside. So just turn this over and just slide it forward to slide it off the guide there. And yeah, wow, that's actually quite bad. So if I bring this up to the camera, this is all white mould. So you can see it's really on there. So what we need to do first is that we'll strip the car down, remove all the gubbins, the wheels, the motor and everything else out of this. We will then carefully remove all the larger pieces of white mould, and then it gets a nice hot bath in soapy water. So we'll just remove the front axle first and take that belt away. So it's more or less like a rubber band, you could say, that holds that on place. Okay, so let's just turn this over and remove the guide. As before, these guides, you just pinch the two pieces of plastic together and that pops through. And then remove the pins from the guide. And we'll probably replace these braids as well while we're at it. So we'll just put that to one side. Remove the front axle, which will equally get a clean, just in case there's any contaminants on this. And the motor, you can release this by the two front catches there. This is an attachment that's been put onto this motor to allow you to potentially put an RX motor in here if you needed to, or wanted to, that is. So we just release that from either side. And we just put the attachment to one side. And then we'll remove the motor. So once again, this is all the attachment to enable you to use an RX motor if you wanted to. And then we'll remove the rear axle. Once again, we'll clean all this as well, just to make sure that there isn't any spurs or anything like that, or spores, should I say, which I don't know if that is the correct thing to say to this, but to me, it does look like mould, and it is called white mould. But we'll clean all this off. So with this, we would have to carefully scratch away any of the larger pieces off the plastic. So literally, as you can see, I'm just carefully using just the rounded edge of my tool, so not to scratch the plastic at all, and just remove any of the larger sections of mould on there. And you want to go slow with this. You don't want it to get all into the air, because I can't imagine anybody wanting to breathe this stuff in. As after I finished, I will hoover all this, just to make sure like none of this does get into the air. Okay, so I'll continue to clean all this off. We'll then give it a nice clean. So once we've removed all the larger areas, we'll then give this a clean in warm water with like fairy liquid. Fairy liquid has worked very well for me in the past. And you can give it a really good scrubbing with that. And what you will find is it will come up incredibly clean with the washing up liquid. And you'd almost be tempted to stop there and think, okay, we've solved the problem, it's gone away. But that's not the case, because it will just return. So unfortunately, what you need to do is once you've done the clean with the soapy water, is then place it and submerge all the plastics in olive oil, and leave it in the olive oil for 20 to 29 days. The longer you can leave it, the better, because what that will do, that will neutralize this white mold from coming back, and that's what we're trying to prevent. It doesn't actually cause any harm to the chassis. As you can see, it's still fairly flexible there. It's very soapy to the touch. It's very, very soapy. So that's when you know, okay, this is definitely the white mold. It's like a soapy texture. But what we'll do is we'll give this a clean up, drop it into the olive oil, leave it for 20 to 29 days, or as long as you can. Longer the better, I've been told. But I've just left it for the 29 days, put it up in the cupboard somewhere, came back to it, and the other cars that I've done, it's never come back. So it is a worked and proven method. So let's get into the wash, and we'll come back once the 29 days are done, and reassemble this car. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward. Okay, so I've placed the plastics into a bowl with some warm water and some fairy liquid. I've left this in there for probably about half an hour. So what we need is I just use an old toothbrush. So what you need to do is then get right into there and give this a real good scrubbing with the toothbrush. You can use any kind of brush if you want, but I just use a toothbrush because I mean, if it works on your teeth, it's going to work quite well on this, hopefully. So you just give these a really good scrub. What you want to do is make sure that there's no evidence left of this white mold anywhere. So you just, it may take you a bit of a while to get it all off. It does take a bit of time. You often find the chassis is the bit to pay the most attention to, right into the corners and the crevices of everything, and just sort of keep going with it, persevere. You know, don't give up when you think, yeah, that's good enough, because it literally won't be good enough. You need to remove all of it. So once you've got enough of that off and you're satisfied that there's no more white mold on there at all, that's when we place all these parts and components completely submerged in olive oil. And then, like I said before, it's 20 to 29 days. So it's an incredibly long period, but that's the period that was recommended to me, and it's always worked. Obviously, it's up to everybody. If they don't want to wait that long, then that's absolutely fine. But it's proven to me, and it's always worked, and it's never come back. So hopefully the process will work again on this one, and sort of years to come, it won't come back again. So I'll continue with this, and once I'm done, we'll drop it into some oil. Okay, so all the parts have cleaned up really well. They've been in the oil for about 25 days, give or take an hour or two. I mean, the requirement is between 20 to 29 days is what I was told. So 25 days is kind of like where I'm happy with it, really. It's worked for me before around that sort of time period. But all the parts they've cleaned up really well. Like the chassis took some going, because all that white mould was in all the crevices and all the corners of the chassis. So this by far took the longest to clean up, as well as like the body shell. This come up really nice. Inside here was completely covered, because it was white mould. You couldn't really see it on the video, but it was literally like a layer of this soapy white mould. And the same as with the driver. I actually had to take the visor off, because it was actually inside of the helmet as well. But it's really come up lovely. All the parts, even down to the windows, that's all come up really nice. So we'll pop all this back together, and then give it a run up and just make sure that it's all working as it should. So we'll start with the body shell. So initially you've got this little grill that sits in the back there, which is just in line with the rear spoiler. So it just sits inside there. We'll then put the windows in. Just remembering which way around it goes. So you just push the front in first, and that just sits down into place there. And then the cockpit, you could call it. You put the back in first. So into the back grille. So you want it just so it's sitting into the slot at the back. So you can see it there. And then you've got these two clips at the front. So just place your fingers behind and give it a gentle press. Okay, and that's perfect. So that's all holding in there now. So that's the body shell pretty much back together now. It's all sitting quite snug. Perfect. So now onto the chassis. So first things first, we're going to change the braids on this as well. So we'll put the motor back into place, which you've got this sort of RX, you could say, attachments on this motor. So we just slide that back into place. And then click those 2 points there. Perfect. So that's holding that motor nice and snug. Take those wires out of the way for the moment. We'll just put the rear axle and gear back on. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, let's just make sure I've got this sitting where I want it to sit. So the cables go into the center, or the wires, should I say. I'll just pop those in there. I just grab the front axle. Perfect. Okay, so that's all back together there. And what we do is we've got the elastic, which engages the four-wheel drive. So we'll just pop that on. Just pull that around that front wheel. Okay. So I think it worked nice with those cables around the front. Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, so now we will put the new braids into place. So just push those through the slots and then bend the fronts over. So all you're doing is bending it over like that, so then it catches. Just bring that straight. And then we'll cut these down afterwards. Slide that one through there. And once again, we'll just bend that forward and then the braid back. That's brilliant. We passed the wires through. And push that clip into the front of the guide, which will then in turn hold the braid in place. Same this side. Just thread all that through. Just make sure we're catching the wire there. Push that into the guide. Perfect. And that should just click straight back into place. Okay, that's brilliant. So that's all back together. So we'll just nip these braids down. Okay, that's perfect. Just push those to one side and then on with the body shell. So we put the front in first and it sits in those two slots just at the front there, and then the back you've just got one little screw. Just wind that back until you feel a click and screw that in. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that's all back together. So we'll give this a little run up and just make sure it's all working as it should, and that no wires or anything like that has become loose on the motor, but it all feels very, very free. So we'll give this a little run up. Okay, so we'll just give this motor a little run just to quickly make sure it's all working. These sort of motors don't really need that much running in really at all, but we'll give this a go. That came on very nice. I'm having to hold this at quite an angle because of the four-wheel drive. Just increase the volts. Yep, that's perfect. Okay, so I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. It was really caped in this this white mould, but it's come up really nice. If anything, you know, it's also given it the opportunity to give it a really good clean up inside. But overall, the car itself, you know, it's really benefited from that. You know, and hopefully this this white mould won't actually come back. There's always a chance that it could, because it's something to do with the manufacturing of the plastic. On some moulds, you know, you got this sort of effect of or side effect, you could say, of this white mould. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it could be the way it's stored, or potentially you know, left in a sort of damp area. Who knows really, but it is a common thing that does happen with these cars. I would say probably 15% of my cars I've had to clean like this. You tend to find that you can pick them up a bit cheaper if they're covered in that stuff, because, you know, it takes a bit of graft to give it a clean up. If you're prepared to do it, then, you know, no doubt you can get a car for a better price. But thank you very much for watching this video, and I do hope the tips and some of the advice is of use. But as always, if you've got any tips or advice on this white mould, or even this Audi Quattro, which is quite a nice little car in itself, you know, please leave it in the comments section, and I'll try my very best to get back to you. But thank you very much, and I'll see you at the next one.